Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keel's Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
It's not every day that you get a chance to sit down and have a conversation with a guest who actually backpacked, literally backpacked from the Cape to Cairo all by herself, that's kind of cool. But the fact of the matter is that there were another 145,000 people that were watching this whole kind of thing that she was going through. And beyond that, she even lived in Ethiopia for 8 years, which I think is just absolutely phenomenal. Well, because even before that, she has 2 degrees, if memory serves me correctly, not just in social work, but also psychology. And today she is helping companies transform by partnering with talent in Africa. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, the founder of Cradle, Valerie Bowden. Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Billy. That was such a nice introduction.
Well, we try.
I appreciate it. That was great.
So no, it's great that you're here. I'm so excited about having the entire Going Long family find out more about you, your journey as someone who has been in corporate life, now have your own company, the path that you've been along, and how you're helping to make an impact on others today. So I kind of gave a really, really high level, a little bit about your story. But Valerie, talk to us a little bit about who you are and also what's led you to this point in your journey.
Great question. So as you mentioned, I'm Valerie, founder of Cradle. What led me here was actually working at a job in the US that I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm so excited for the weekend. I dread Monday. Let me go take a trip to Africa and figure out what I really want to do with my life. And that was how I decided to backpack Africa, which led to living in Ethiopia. And that's kind of where all my story started to unfold.
You dreaded Mondays. That's something that's really, really interesting. But you dreaded Mondays, but you decided that you could have made a lot of different choices. What was it that was calling you? Well, there's a lot of different things, but what was it that was calling you to the African continent?
So after college, I had actually done 3 months of volunteering in Ethiopia. And then I came back, went to grad school, got a corporate job. And those first 3 months in Ethiopia were amazing because I loved Ethiopia. Like as soon as I arrived, I fell in love with the country, the food, the coffee. I also realized that as an American, I don't need to go volunteer anywhere. Like not needed, not helpful, not a good idea. It showed me kind of the negative side of the charity world. But when I came back to the US, I was still thinking, wow, I love Ethiopia. And it was so different than I expected Africa to be, not know anything about the continent. Yeah. So I wonder what other African countries are like. And I'm in this job I don't like. So let me just go backpack and see these different countries and figure out why I still feel so drawn to the continent.
So it's really interesting. So I've got a couple of different things. But the one thing is when you said to people, hey, listen, I'm going to go and I'm just going to backpack and travel around the African continent by myself. Kind of what was the reaction of those that were around you? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, everybody was against it. That was really when the movie Taken was coming out. So everybody thought I was going to get kidnapped. Right. Really nobody was supportive. But I felt deep down, something is drawing me there. I have to go.
Yeah. So, and part of the thing that I actually didn't realize that, but I'll share this because a lot of times things are like they say in Spanish, más fuerte que yo, like it's like stronger than me. Like there was this thing because in 1995, I did an overseas experience to the University of Virginia. I was living for 3 months, the same thing, and lived in Valencia, Spain. Completely, like I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Like I didn't even think I would get to California. And then all of a sudden I'm in like Europe. And so I don't know what it was, but that experience changed something in me. And so that was 1995, only to find out in July of 2005 that I would actually be moving back to Spain and have been here for over 2 decades. I couldn't explain it, but there was something that was calling me to Europe, probably in a very similar way that something was calling you for in your life in Africa. And sometimes it's really, really hard to explain that because I had friends of mine that were like, why would you move to Europe? Like, why would you ever do that? Like, we've got it so good here. And so I was just curious if you also had some similar kind of, like, I don't know if it's a Midwest thing or people are kind of like, why would you go anywhere else? And then also having the wherewithal to continue to move forward. What was it that gave you that motivation to continue to go in spite of others around you saying, don't do it?
Yeah, great question. It might be a Midwest thing because there's nobody in my life who had been to Africa or really had even gone backpacking, right? It wasn't something people in Fort Wayne, Indiana did. The feeling was just so strong. And I just, something about it was like, I trust that I have to do this. And also I did set myself up for success in the way, like I bought a one-way ticket and people think it's because I was so adventurous, but really it was because I wanted to be able to buy a plane ticket back if something bad happened. Right. So it was kind of like a baby step. Like, let me just go. And then if things go really bad, I'll come back. Right. Mm-hmm. And I would say that now the people who doubted my trip come to me and say, I wish I would have done something like that. Or they're like, that was an amazing choice. So it's funny how like things do kind of come full circle and the people who doubted you end up being the ones that compliment you afterwards.
Yeah, that's because you become their like beacon of what's possible, right? Because before that, they'd never even given themselves the probability, the possibility of that. So much like me, like you've got 2 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, social work and psychology.
Yeah, so you have 2 degrees. So you are an overachiever, right? So you did your overachieving thing. And then you decide to go out and do what most of us are taught. Like I was taught to, go get good grades, get your degree, and then go get a job. Is that similar for you?
100%.
Well? Okay, cool. So you start this job, you start working for someone else. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that's about. Like you talked about eventually you get to a point where you dread Mondays, but I'm sure it didn't start that way.
Right. So I had finished grad school and I didn't know what to do. Like I was applying for jobs, wasn't getting anything, finally got one, moved to Tennessee, and I did it for a year and it just never felt quite right. Like it was just like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm 25. I'm dreading like every day. I need to do something. And I didn't really know what to do. The only thing I could feel was, let's just go back to Africa. Cause that's what's on my mind. That's what I'm curious about. Yeah. I'll do that. And then I'll come back and then I'll really figure out what I really want to do with the rest of my life.
Okay. So you followed your curiosity. Mm-hmm. Went back to Africa. Mm-hmm. What happened from there?
Well, I want to first add that the whole time I was planning my backpacking trip, I was so excited and I felt like at peace and I didn't mind. And then right before I was supposed to go, like the day before, I totally freaked out, like crying in the airport. Like all the fear kind of got to me. And so I think it's really important for people to know, like, follow your curiosity and then you will get to a point where you get freaked out as well. And you have to push through that uncomfort. And the first few weeks when I was traveling in South Africa, I was also still scared. Like I didn't know how to do public transportation. I didn't know where to stay. I'd brought all the wrong things. I couldn't lift my backpack. And then after a few weeks, I started to get the hang of it and I met other people who were doing it. And then that's when my trip became really fun and I loved it. So I feel like that's just like a good takeaway for people to know.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, everybody, Go Along family, this is not, this is just curious because Valerie and I are speaking about this, but I remember when I moved to Europe in 2001, because I didn't end up in Spain in 2005. I actually started in France in 2001, in September 2001. And I remember getting there. I didn't have any challenges until I arrived. So I actually arrived in France. And when I was living in France, it was when I had problems with my utilities and I couldn't speak the language because I moved there not knowing a word of French, that I had my breakdown. Like I literally was crying, like, what am I doing here? Like, this is insane. Like I had this really cool, dream and I was telling everybody I was going to be moving over there. But there are realities of when you want to do things differently, there are crises moments, right? And then it's a matter of like, how do you react thereafter? And so it sounded like yours was positive once you went through your crisis and kind of. Did you go through that by yourself? Did you pull out and, did you reach out to other people to help you move forward or kind of how did you work through that?
Right. Well, when I was traveling, I started to meet other backpackers, and then they just kind of showed me the ropes, or there were like really cool locals that I met along the way that was like, this is how you catch the bus, you know? So I think it's definitely like perseverance, but yeah, exactly. Like you said, whenever you make a big move, it's not going to be smooth. It's actually there's going to be some turbulence for sure when you get going.
Yeah. So that's definitely happened along the way. And like here, there's one of the, like for me, I worked in the corporate life for 26 years, right? Corporate was really good to me. I was fortunate. I didn't have many days where I dreaded going to work. I mean, there were some times where like I wanted a really big deal to close because it meant like a massive bonus check, going to Hawaii, all this other kind of stuff. But I genuinely enjoyed what it was that I did. But I'm just curious because I believe that when you give yourself the opportunity to find something positive in an experience, that you find it. Maybe you don't find it in the moment. It's upon reflection. But if you think about your big company experience, what would you say was like, what are some of the positives that you were able to take away from big company experience for you?
Right. Well, okay. So the biggest company experience I had was then after I finished my trip, moved to Ethiopia, and I started working for an American company in Ethiopia. And that was when we actually worked with Fortune 5,000 companies like McDonald's, Charles Schwab, Instacart, Shutterfly. They all have teams on the ground. Yep. So for me, that was a positive experience in so many ways because one, I didn't even know outsourcing was happening. Two, I never would have been able to work with these big companies by myself. So it gave me that kind of exposure. Three, I got sent to the cold calling department and I was like, does that still exist? Is that still effective? Yeah. And all of a sudden I became a cold calling manager. And so it gave me exposure to a whole new world that now has completely shaped my own company and what I do. And so, yeah, for me, it was exposure and just seeing how things are done.
So I work with clients who at times have this idea of being able to live overseas or have this idea, hey, listen, I'd love to move with my family. We want to go here. We want to go there. Like I have my experience of what it was like because I went as a student. And then once I was a student, I had to figure out how to stick around and stay in the country. Just because I'm American, it wasn't easy. It may have helped a little bit more to have a blue passport, but it definitely was not an easy thing to do. What was your experience like as someone who was there? Did you already have working papers? Did you have to kind of figure that out? What was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, even getting a work visa for Ethiopia was so stressful. I mean, you have to get a company to sponsor you. It has to be a certain kind of company. And then every year it renews. And then you get that panicky feeling about what happens if it doesn't renew. No, again, not easy. It's just one of those like painful things. Like government offices are not fun anywhere in this world. So yeah, not fun.
Yeah. So, because there's
worth it. Right. It's just one of those things. And now I have so many hilarious stories of like, oh, like you only waited 6 hours in line. I waited 10 hours, like you kind of like swap trauma stories with other people.
So, yeah. So I definitely have mine.
Everybody has a
story. I was actually waiting for about a month and a half for my working papers in the south of France, which was just a whole. Well, we'll have to talk about that one offline. We won't go into that too much here, but it's definitely a story. So you're then working for a large company. You're working locally. You're going through you have your skill set that you're bringing. What did you find initially when you were working locally? I guess maybe what was it that drove you to want to work locally? Because I'm sure there's a story there too. And then afterwards, why don't you answer that one first, and then I got another one after that.
Yeah, well, my background was in social work, right? So at first I wanted to be part of the charity world, nonprofits. And then being in Africa, I saw all the wrong ones. I'm sure there's some great ones, but I saw the bad ones, like ones that were like backed by celebrities. And then you see them on the ground and you're like, oh, this is causing harm to the community. So I then was like, well, I don't want to use my social work degree anymore. Like, I don't want to be part of this world. And at the same time, especially in Africa, I was like, well, why don't people just have jobs? Like, why don't we focus on job creation? Because then people don't need donated shoes. Like they don't need you to send a box at Christmas if they have their own job, right? So that sent me to the world of business for the first time. And that's when I got this job at an outsourcing company. I was hitchhiking one day in Ethiopia, got a lift from someone who worked at an outsourcing company. They said that they were hiring. They were looking for an American to work with the American clients. I got the job because there wasn't a lot of other Americans applying. And then when I got involved, I was like, oh, this is cool because this is creating jobs. and it's business and it's sustainable and it felt fair. And that's how I kind of stumbled into that world.
Okay. So you're backpacking, you're fine. You stumble into this world. You're there now. And so now you're the American person who's working with American clients. You're also entrenched in the local community. Talk to us a little bit about that, because eventually I want to kind of talk about what it is that you're doing today. But like I said, I think there's a lot that you can always learn from whatever your big company experience is.
Yeah. So that was, at that point, I'd been living in Ethiopia for a few years. I met my husband who's Ethiopian along the way. So I was already kind of learning the language much more and steeped in the culture. And it was like all of those like skills that I had, even as a social worker, like the ability to see both sides, the ability to kind of be the advocate, to those things that like, you're like, I can't really put this on a resume, but I'm good at it. Those all came to life when I was working there. And so yeah, it was just really powerful to be able to know both sides and to be the person in between and make sure that things were smooth.
Okay, cool. So you're leveraging what you learned. You're actually, so many people don't get a chance to leverage what they learn in a business context. So you're doing that. You're also at the same time, I guess, recognizing that once again, that there are things that you like and maybe things that, well, you've kind of got your own little way of doing things, or maybe your own way of seeing things. So talk to, and the reason I asked that question, because there's so many times that we're in a big company, right? You're in a big company and you like what you're doing. And then one day you wake up and you're like, but I could be doing something else. I talked to so many guests that have a similar experience. And I'm just wondering for you, if one, did that happen? And if so, can you maybe talk us through what was happening while you're at a big company? You thought, this is cool, but am I actually using my skill set to the max?
It was hard because I liked what I was doing, but I started to see the flaws and I couldn't quite figure out.
What do you mean by that? Now I'm curious. I'm really curious.
I saw the flaws in terms of a lot of these big companies, like we couldn't put that, they hired from Ethiopia. They didn't want that to be known. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And they didn't really care about the team members. They didn't really pay that well. And so it was like, oh, I'm so close to doing what I really like. I like this idea of outsourcing, but it's not quite how I want it to be done. And so I actually pitched the CEO, let me run my own division kind of my way. And at first that was the idea behind Cradle, is we were just going to be a sister unit of this big outsourcing company. And when I finally landed my first client, the CEO gave me a choice. Like, do you want to do this with me or do you want to do it on your own? And I was like, I want to do it on my own. And so that's when I decided to split and really take my idea and make it my own company and do it a little bit more my way.
So that's interesting. So you have the CEO of the company that you're working for, the local CEO.
Yep.
Okay. Wow, that's a really interesting thing, because you're in the big company. You're going to run your own division, and I speak to other clients who have they're responsible for a specific division. Maybe it's a 20 million or 50 million or whatever. I know in my corporate days, I ran $100 million division across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. What was your thought process when you were given the opportunity to either? And I'm going to put this in someone who may be listening, saying, okay, well, yeah, you get the security of running a division in the big company. You don't have to put any of your own money and all this other kind of stuff, or you run it on your own. For someone who's just working corporate, and I say just working corporate with air quotes if you're not watching this on the video version, but that can also feel very risky if you're going to open this division on your own. What was your thought process?
It was a tough call because also I was 8 months pregnant. So the idea of also starting a company.
Whoa. Hang on a second. So if you're running on the treadmill, if you're swimming, or you're just shooting basketball, or you're listening, Valerie, will you please just, because I was talking about risk before, will you please add in that you were what? How many months pregnant?
I was also 8 months pregnant. So it was like, okay, so I can either run this division with a company, safety net, I'd have a salary, right? I'm giving up some of the profits, and I still have to run things by, the CEO and the other C-suite, right? Or here's my time. Like, I can launch my own company. I have a blessing to leave kind of like in a peaceful way. I can do this exactly what I want. But I am 8 months pregnant. I'm giving birth next month. And at that point, we had just moved back to America. It was like the cost had risen. Yeah. It was a tough challenge. Yeah. And at the end, I just decided I don't know. Something was pulling me again, like that feeling like I want to do it my way. I want it to be more authentic to me. So I decided to do it. And the first 6 months were not smooth, nor were they fast paced. We had a few clients. I made, just enough to cover like daycare maybe, but it was definitely a tough start. But again, I think that's the lesson I've learned is like timing never really adds up in the right way. Like there's never really a perfect time. There's always something that's not quite right, but you can make it work. At the end of the day, you make it work. You have no other option.
Yeah. Sometimes people say, and I don't know if you hear this, but like giving up is not an option. Quitting is not an option. Have you heard those people say those kinds of things?
Yes.
So I fundamentally disagree with those things. Like,
tell me.
Well, only because I think even when the odds are down, like quitting is always an option. Giving up is always an option. It's just not an option that I was willing to take, or I'm sure that it's one that you weren't willing to take because you continued to move through it. So it's kind of a different take on it. Because when I hear it, it seems very dismissive because quitting is a real thing. There are people that quit all the time.
I think the pain of quitting would have been harder. Maybe that's what it is. Like for me, I was like, I just risked everything. And now I'm going through a couple of years of being somewhat broke, right? With a lot of stress. Like the pain of quitting after all this is harder than anything else. So I have to I'm going to make it work.
Yeah. And so I appreciate you keeping it real because so many people are like, yeah, in this, everything, day one, it worked and blah, blah, blah. So the first 6 months, it was really tough. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges? I mean, I can only imagine you're a new mother, you're starting this business, probably all the processes weren't in place and all that kind of stuff. But talk to us a little bit about that, those first 6 months.
Yeah, it was very slow because one, I didn't have my LinkedIn built up. Marketing can take a few months to really get your name out there. So by the time I got my name out there, that took time. I was also pivoting on some of the choices. So originally I thought, okay, I'm going to work with other outsourcing companies and they're going to be my partner. Then I realized the other outsourcing companies don't have the quality. They don't have the recruitment standards. They're taking a bigger chunk, which destroys the social impact I'm trying to make, right? So then I had to pivot to hiring direct. So it was a lot of figuring things out the hard way. And even that first year, just like all the self-doubt, I was thinking, my income took a big, decrease. So I was like, I could have just stayed at that 9 to 5, had like a cushion salary. What am I doing? Like this has made my life worse. At least for the first year, it made my life worse.
So the first year you're going through this self-doubt, probably in the same way that you were when you first landed in Africa. You were telling us before everything was going well, and then you have this big crisis moment. It sounds like a pattern, like you're in your first year, and you also have this kind of crisis moment. Which what I think is really important is to see that these things, if you're going through it, you're not the only one. Like Valerie's talking to you about how she went through it. I've shared how I went through these crisis moments. The most important thing is, what are you doing when the crisis arrives? Like, how are you moving forward? How are you getting through it? And when you went through it in your own business, what was it? Because it wasn't the money right in the beginning, right? It
wasn't the money.
what was it that gave you the strength to continue to fight forward?
Yeah. I mean, some of it was just seeing how well it was working, even like on a micro level. Like the few virtual assistants I had placed had the best job, making the most amount of money they've ever made. The clients were super happy. And so I just kept thinking like, okay, this is working. I just need to scale it up and figure it out. And again, some of it was like, I had put my name on the line, like on LinkedIn, on guest podcasts. I had put my name out there so much that, again, like the pain of quitting or saying it didn't work was so painful to me that I was like, I put my name out there too much for this to end. And I can't go back to a 9 to 5 after this. Right. And part of it was like the one benefit was also I could make my own schedule. So then as a mom with 2 small kids at that point, I could have a schedule where I could see my kids as much. And that mattered a lot to me.
Yeah. So when you talk about the time, like investing your time where you want with your children, with your loved ones, those are things that you can never get back. You can always make more money, no matter how difficult, no matter how devastating things happen. But the time you can never, ever get back. And so,
right.
Valerie,
Just a couple on that really fast. I remember when I was still working for the corporate, and like my son would be like knocking on the door, crying, needing me, and like I can't open the door and see him. And so that was heartbreaking. So then when I had my own company, I could schedule my meetings around nap time and daycare schedule. Yep. And I also was attracting a lot more female clients, and they didn't seem to care if I brought my baby into the call. Like they were cool with it. They'd bring their baby in, and I was like, okay, at least I'm being authentic, and my kids are doing better at least. Yeah. Income wise, not yet, but everything else was kind of pointing in the right direction.
Yeah. And it is one of those things, especially like I think about so many of our listeners or viewers who are in corporate roles today. And you think, well, I know for a long time, like I was in sales and sales leadership. And so it was about how do I get the next bonus check? How do I get the next trip to Hawaii and all these things? But I remember also in October 2021, my dad got really ill. And it was a matter of like, I worked at a really good company, great bosses, but I didn't want to have to keep asking if I could fly back to the US. Like I didn't want to keep asking for permission to do this or to do that. And so eventually it was like, you know what, it's time for me to do something else. Not because I don't like what I'm doing or because I don't think the money is great, but I just want to own my time. And I want to own my time in the way that I want to do it. We talked about earlier before we started recording, like I've been in the States for the last 5 weeks. Well, I didn't have to ask anybody other than my parents, my brother and sister, because I was crashing at their places, other than that. So it's just being able to have more control over time. So what would you say to that person who is today, who's working in their corporate role? They are thinking about doing something differently. They like what they're doing. And, they've got this maybe business idea or something that they want to do on their own. They're high achievers. And they're thinking, well, you know what? I've got this business idea and I should just go out there and do it all by myself because that's how I've done it in corporate. What do you say to that person?
I mean, I would say go for it. Like if that's where you feel so led, and it's not like you're doing it just for the money, but something inside of you says like, I have to do this, or I'm so curious about this, I would say go for it. Now, do you need to quit the month before you give birth and do it by yourself? Maybe not. Like maybe start slow, maybe get up and running. And once you're making good income, then do it, right? Like you don't have to do the most painful route like I did. But I would say if you're not feeling at peace, like do something, even if it's a small thing, and just explore it.
Yeah. And for that person who is, and then probably more specifically, that person who says, okay, I want an idea, but now their business is probably running a bit, but they're burning the candle at both ends, I think is what we say. I've forgotten all the language in my brain. But you only have 24 hours in a day. You want to continue to grow your business. You want your idea. You want to perform well at your job. You want to build your I say you perform well in your 9 to 5. And then you also want to use your 5 to 9 to build your side business. Doing that on your own, do you think that's the best way to do that? When you want to build your business on the side and you actually have a proof of concept, like you can see that things are going. I'm not saying in the very, very early stages because you got to prove your concept, but and this is more towards kind of what you do. Because I try to do things on my own for way too long when I kind of probably gotten some help. I
mean, again, no right or wrong. Like one way or the other, if you're a high achiever, you're going to make it work. Whether it's just a phase of your life that you're working too much, or again, because of what I do, I would also just say like, why not hire like a virtual assistant or a cold caller to help you that's offshore? Like it's really affordable and that would help you expand faster. But again, like if I were to go back and like redo my backpacking trip or redo how I started Cradle, I would do it so much more efficient, so much faster, so much better. So you're going to make so many mistakes and you're going to probably think you could do this much better, right? Hopefully if you're working with a mentor, they can tell you a little bit how to do it faster and how to do it better. You don't have to suffer. But one way or the other, just make a small step and try it.
Yeah. And so mentorship, that's something that's super key and super important. It's one of the things we consistently talk about. But the people that come to you, like say the more the corporate profile, the big company profile, but individually, not the big company themselves, but let's say somebody who wants to start their business on the side or they want to start to build it. What do you feel like most of them are suffering from when they come to see your team? Say, hey, Valerie, I need to see you because I'm suffering from, what is that?
Yeah, they don't have enough time to do it. So a lot of them are maybe somebody who wants to become a keynote speaker, right? So they have their day job But now at night, they're spending 4 hours a night looking for events. And it's like, well, you don't need to do that. Like anybody can look for events. Anybody can pitch you to be on a guest podcast. All you have to do is be the one that shows up for the event and shows up for the guest podcast. Or we have smaller clients who maybe have a product that they launched and they just need help with like running their Instagram or something. And so like they have the strategy, but they need some support to actually do some like the admin and the task work.
So helping them save time, doing some of the tasks. Do you feel like, or from what you've seen, or what your team's seen, is there a profile that has more of a challenge letting go of things versus not? And how do you help that person who's used to always having lots of control?
Oh yeah. Well, I tell them my own story that when I hired my first team member to support me, I tripled my revenue in 3 months. Literally, I think I went from like 6,000 a month to like 18,000 a month from like January to March. And that was the power of deciding I don't have to do everything myself. Somebody else can truly do this and better than me because they would have their sole focus. And so for people who can't delegate, I think that's the biggest challenge. I think anybody who's more entrepreneurial focused, we think that we can do all of it. And then that becomes our downfall, is because there's things that you're better at than other things, and like stay in your zone of genius and do that more.
Yeah, I like that. And the concept of many times it's, is it the Dan Sullivan talks about who, not how, right? It's the whole, like when you're a high achiever, you want to figure out how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? And when you start to realize the value of your time, especially when you are someone who is in a highly paid corporate role, if you find the right who that can help you not figure out how to do many things, but just give you the result, you help that person and you also win, because ultimately it's going to help you to make much more impact elsewhere.
I think people don't know, like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, right? Yeah. Like, I think you're like, I can do this, but should you? Should you be doing this? No.
Well, listen, as we start to get ready to wrap things up, I guess at the end of the day, when you're looking to bring someone on your team, you learn a lot of things. And I guess maybe for that person that's thinking to themselves, you know what, this episode, this comes just in time because I'm thinking about reaching out. I'm thinking about adding on. I feel like I'm just exhausted every single day. I wake up, my brain's on fire because I'm trying to stay up at night, get up early, first thing in the morning. What are maybe one or two signs that you've seen? You've talked about time before, but that it's the moment to actually start to look into getting more assistance. What would you say?
I would start with a time audit. I find that very helpful. So for at least 1 week or 2 weeks, write down everything you do every 15 minutes. And then, write down like the task and like the category. Was that a sales task, a marketing task? At the end of the week, look at where you spent your time. What can you delegate? What should you not be doing? What lights you up? What doesn't? And then that quickly becomes like the job description for who you're going to hire. You might find like I realized I was spending 10 hours a week on inbox management. That's crazy. Just like for my email, right? So you can hire someone to help you with that, whatever it is. But I would start with the time audit and go from there.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And that's one of those things when we talk about it, it seems really, really easy, but it is something that when you do it, you dedicate your time, and at least for that 5 to 7 day period.
Yeah.
If you can do it more than that, even better, but you start realizing exactly where you are using your time or where you are quote unquote wasting time.
It's like if you've ever calorie counted and you're like, wait, there's how many calories in one beer? Like what? A cupcake has that much calories? What? So it's like, it seems obvious, but no, when you actually look at it, you'll be amazed. And then it does again quickly become the job description. So it kind of helps you, and it folds into like your SOP that you need. So it all goes together. This is just the first step. Yeah.
Love that. So that's the audit. That's a great place to start. Actually, there's one last thing before I ask you kind of my last question. So if you can, and we've talked a bit about Cradle today, but can you talk to us specifically about how is Cradle helping companies I talked about in the very beginning transform their businesses and using that with talent in Africa?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yep. So now we've grown. We have 120 team members.
Congratulations!
Which is amazing. All the risk paid off. But we work with companies, small and medium companies, as well as, again, people starting off for the first time. And we do virtual assistants, cold calling, sales, marketing, a lot of that kind of like first tier kind of work. And it's been such a win-win because we see how happy these US companies are with like the level of like American accents we're able to find, with the quality of the work ethic. And then at the same time, there's like millions of highly skilled professionals in Africa who are so excited about working for a US company, and they love plugging in and doing a great job with the companies that we place them with. And so, yeah, so for anyone out there who's like, I need some support, and you've probably never thought of hiring from Philippines, or if you think of hiring from the Philippines, but you don't think of like Ethiopia or Zimbabwe, same concept, but it's great talent coming out of the continent.
All right, fantastic. So that's it's helpful, and we're going to give you a chance to talk to us specifically about how people can find out more about you and Cradle and your services. But Valerie, one of the things that I realized, like going from corporate life to entrepreneurial life, things don't always happen perfectly, right? There are times when things are going really, really well, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. This is going to stay forever, but it's just a moment. And then there are things that are not working very, very well, and you're at the bottom and you're thinking, oof, this is a terrible time, but it's also just a moment. But along the line, you start to realize that you consistently grow, right? And so I think about that on the timeline and think about it. Okay, if you could leave messages for your future self, you know, when those times are really, really high, what would you tell yourself? When your times are really, really low, what would you tell yourself? But more than anything, if you can think about Valerie 3 years from now, I won't say the specific year, but 3 years from now, or from whenever you're listening, what is the one piece of advice that you want to give to Valerie 3 years down the road?
I mean, I think the advice that's always served me is just to really enjoy the journey. And I know that's like so cheesy, but I hope that's one thing I never forget. Like I remember when I was backpacking and I finally got to Cairo, and I was like not happy at all because like the fun part was actually traveling. And I think sometimes we think about starting a company because you're like, oh, I can't wait to sell it. And that's how I'm going to retire. I'm going to make millions. And it's like, that's not what's going to really satisfy you. Like this hard, challenging, messy part of the business is the part that I'm going to want to do all over again. So in 3 years from now, I hope I'm still enjoying the journey and having as much fun doing the day-to-day as I am now.
Absolutely love that. All right. Enjoy the journey. So we'll have to reconnect 3 years from now, listen to this episode, and you can listen to yourself. So as you talked about, I mean, just from the very beginning, whether we're talking about you backpacking from the Cape to Cairo, having, writing your blog and having people follow and listen, to dreading your Mondays, to then being able to actually find your thing, betting on yourself. I mean, I think it is so inspirational to think about you're pregnant, you're 8 months pregnant, not just pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and you're given this opportunity and you decide, hey, listen, this is my moment. It's another defining moment, one that you decided to, hey, listen, you're going to make an impact. And you've continued to do that, helping other companies, small, medium, and large, transform their businesses with talent in Africa. And you're doing all of this now to the point where your team is 120 people. And I know that everybody's going, well, yeah, Billy, just ask her the question. So I'm going to ask you the question, Valerie, because I know that everybody wants to know, how in the world can they find out more about you? How can they find out more about what you're doing at Cradle and be able to make a connection? Help us understand how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, people can go to our website, cradle.com. It's spelled CRDLE, like without the A. And there you'll find, like, you can get a lead magnet that just literally is like our playbook on how do you find and onboard offshore talent successfully? What roles can they do? How do you set them up? Like a 90-day KPI, like all of that is in a free ebook. Or you can just schedule a call. We have team members who will meet with you, and we can just be a sounding board on, are you ready to hire? What role should they do? What should you do? What should they do? Anything like that, we have team members available to talk to you.
All right. Fantastic. So CRDLE.com. You can go out, and then, as she said, she's got a resource for you. You can reach out to her team as well. And so, Valerie, I do want to say, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, thank you very, very much for deciding to invest your time with me, with us, and help us to understand more about how Cradle is making an impact and can also help individuals move forward faster. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was great.